Welcome to The Relocated South African, the show for navigating immigration from South Africa. I'm your host, Jan Hugo from Lagos, Portugal. Today I'm very privileged to welcome a special guest to our show. He's a well-known South African entrepreneur, businessman, and one of the founders of Rand Merchant Bank, and may I say my former boss. Welcome, Paul Harris.
Thanks, Jan. Pleasure to be here.
Paul, this has been some week in South Africa with the White House meeting, making headlines all over the world, putting South Africa in the spotlight. In my opinion, social media has been ridiculous on its focus on what happened and what's happening in South Africa. Despite all this, you've always maintained that the grass is not always greener. What keeps you so positive about South Africa?
Jan, okay, I did make a few notes, but maybe I should just quickly go through them.
Absolutely.
I'm a bit of a history buff, so I like to just go back and I've often asked myself, what did South Africans face at various stages of our lives? And I won't go back as far as when my ancestor arrived here, and I've got lots of ancestors. In fact, my ancestors date back in South Africa to a period where California and Texas still belonged to Mexico.
Wow.
And, so that was my father's side came in 1850. My mother goes back even further than that. So I'm a proper South African. I'm more South African than any Australian is Australian and any American is an American. Okay, so I go back and I just think about the generations that I, at my old age now, have come across. Okay, then there's my grandfather in the Boer War. Now, just remember in the Boer War, the Afrikaans-speaking South Africans, they actually had absolutely nothing. Their farms were burnt down. Their children were put in concentration camps. I mean, they had serious bloody issues in there. And they survived and they came through. Then you had the First World War. My grandfather went to the war, came back. He was badly gassed. In the school that I went to, Maritzburg College, 97 kids were killed. Now, you just think of it. There were probably only about 100 kids in the school, and 97 were killed in the war. So that was serious bloody issues that they dealt with. They dealt with it through the Depression. The Second World War, my father, 1940-ish, around there. Our school lost 125 people. And now imagine being in that situation in this country. I mean, we really had problems. And then, of course, you had apartheid. 1976, you had riots. Kids were burning schools down, rightfully so. They had obviously serious issues that they were dealing with, and the kids actually rioted. In 1986, around about there, we had debt standstill, where we weren't allowed, as banks and so on, and that's when I first sort of started, all the debt was frozen. I mean, the prospects of even surviving economically were absolutely down. And after all these points that I make every year, we've survived and we've come through. Then in the transition, 94 to 95, the Blanche was going mad. They actually drove into the trade center in Kempton, and there were serious problems. Then Mandela came into power, and I thought for the first time we had a chance of, instead of breaking down the country, we could start building up. And if you go back to Mandela's speeches, he said that we have to march on into Pretoria and take over the heights of the economy. I mean, that was proper stuff. We survived that. We survived the dot-com crash. Then the crisis in 2007, financial crisis. We were gonzo. One day I woke up and I was running First Rand, and our market cap was greater than Citibank and Morgan Stanley. And I'm not saying that that's good. I'm just saying that how desperate that was. I mean, there was no ways that we were better than them. But, and I just sort of thought that, something is going to go wrong. We're going to get wiped out. We survived. Then Zuma arrived and things were going well. Then Zuma arrived and he stole the future of a lot of South Africans in 2009. And we had the lost 10 years. And we survived. And we've always had crime. I don't know if you remember that I sort of was the driver of a crime campaign, I think, 2003, where we at FNB, after David Rattray was murdered, I started a campaign that we had to write a letter to Thabo Mbeki about making crime the highest priority. And we had like 1 million letters. And I got called to Mbeki's office to say did I have political aspirations and so on. And I said, no, I want you to prioritize crime.
Paul, was that the time when Maya Khan became the head of police?
Soon after that, yeah.
Okay, I remember that.
And then, of course, Zuma got taken out and lost power. And then Ramaphosa came in. And Ramaphosa started off very well, and he's been a huge disappointment, basically because he never makes a decision. So we get to this point, and we've survived all that. And guess what? We love this country. We live in the greatest country in the world. We've had shit, but we've survived it. We find a way. To a large extent, we live in our bubbles. But sadly, we don't share the bubbles. I don't feel any guilt about that because we make contributions to the country. We pay our taxes, we philanthropists and so on. So we have a great time. So that is the way that I see it. We've had much, much worse situations than what we've got now. And I think that from here, we'll continue to underperform, but I think we can still continue to have a great time in South Africa with huge opportunities.
No, I think that's fantastic. And I think it's time that we get that message across. One of my feelings on this is that the media is so focused, and the social media and all these podcasts and so on are so focused on the negative side of South Africa, because that's what sells. If you go to Tucker Carlson and all the big podcasters, they have gazillions of followers. So to get onto those podcasts and tell a bad story, that's what sells. And I think somebody's got to actually stand up and say, listen, but it's not that bad. And I know it's rich coming from me sitting in Portugal, but I honestly do believe that we have a responsibility to the country to get a positive message out.
Jan, can I just add that if you want bad news about South Africa, I suggest you go to places like St. Ives, you go to Dallas, you go to parts of the States, you go to London, you go to those cold and wet places, and Toronto and those sort of places. Then you get all the shit. I mean, these guys send me, if there's a bad article or bad podcast about South Africa, I get it. But I don't get it from people in South Africa, by the way.
No, I think you made the point in your article that the diaspora, the people that leave, are often the ones that spread the worst message. And isn't that in a way because people like to justify their decision? So if there's shit happening, then they're going to say, you see, I made the right call. They don't want good news.
Yeah, look, I think there's obviously something like that. I think it's maybe being a bit unkind unto people, but I don't know. If people have given up trying and they've given up sort of the culture of South Africa and they've adopted another culture, and then, then that's fine. But I think if you really miss it and so on, I think it's a bit sad, to be quite frank. I emigrated, and it took, whichever way you look at it, it takes 5 years out of your life.
Absolutely.
It becomes, before you go, it's the biggest subject of any conversation you have with any friends. That's all you talk about. When you get there, it's a big complication about where do you live and who do you make friends with and what sort of home are you going to get and blah, blah, blah. And then, of course, you keep going back and phoning your friends and coming back for holidays and so on. It's a very disruptive thing to do. And I suppose once you've done it, it's fine. And I did it, and I don't regret having done it. I think I had a fantastic experience. I made some great friends and so on. But I don't think people should underrate how disruptive it is to one's life to actually emigrate.
Paul, I can attest to that. On this podcast, I've now spoken to a lot of people everywhere, Ireland, Spain, Dubai, Australia, everywhere. And, it's a massively disruptive process. And people miss South Africa. I was actually talking to some English people I played golf with this morning, and I said the same thing. Immigration for them to come and live in Portugal from London is nothing, because it's like moving from Joburg to Cape Town. You can always go back. Whereas for South Africans, it's a massive decision. And for younger people, you talk about taking time out. It's also financially, it's a hell of a disruptive process. And that's why I often think that the decision to leave is based on bad news. Very often, it's a crime, an invasion or whatever, and people focus on that and they say, no, I'm buggering off. And the counter is that the push is sometimes very hard, but you don't realize what you're getting into. Last week, I was talking to a family in Holland, and they've got a fantastic job opportunity. They just can't live there. They don't want to be there, and I think they'll go back. And that I think is a thing. It's a big decision, and this is the problem. Is I don't think there's enough of a positive message about why it is still a good idea to stay in South Africa.
Jan, I mean, you're talking to somebody that has done it, and I tell you, I haven't regretted it for a nanosecond. And this is a little bit cheesy, but I often talk about using the analogy of an animal. If you were an impala, where would you want to live? Would you live in the wilderness or would you live in a zoo? And I'll give you the upside of a zoo. You're going to get fed every day. It's going to be warm. It's never going to be too cold. Who knows? They may even bring in a little lady impala or male impala, depending on who you are. And so all your needs will be sorted, and you'll probably live a little bit longer. Okay, versus living in the wilderness, where you hear the dawn chorus, and you wake up in the morning, and there's thunderstorms, and it's cold sometimes, and it's too hot at other times. And by the way, if you break a leg and you're in the zoo, they'll put a little plaster on you and you'll probably survive. You definitely won't in the wilderness. So that's it. I say you can choose. Well, what do you want to be, in the wilderness, or do you want to be in a zoo? And I'm not saying a zoo in the negative way. I'm just saying in a safe place, And I think I'll go for that. And sometimes I say that the life expectancy of somebody like me outside of South Africa is 73 years and 4 months. Okay, I'm past that now. But for South Africans, it's 74 and 2 months. And I tell you, for those 2 months, I'll take what I've got.
I hear you. I think, one of the points you made in your article is that you said the standard deviation of our emotions are set at max. You're never just a little bit happy or a little bit sad. and I think that's what often happens when you do immigrate, is that you get into a boring situation. Yes, it's safe and everything works and you've got electricity and so forth. But you never have that feeling of total elation or total gatvol that you have in South Africa.
Yeah, and I think I say in that article, which was written about 12 years ago, by the way, I just say that my daughter runs a NGO that teaches young kids to read, okay? 220,000 kids online reading. She's got 20,000 computers in various schools around the country. She employs 800 people. She doesn't take a cent out of it herself. And I'll take you to one of those schools in the townships, and these little kids with their bright eyes, they get onto those computers. You cannot believe how enthused they are and so on. I mean, any guy that doesn't walk out of there with a lump in their throat and a tear in their eye and just feel unbelievably alive that you can make a contribution like this, I think that that's all part of it. You can make a contribution, and it's off a very low base. So a very small thing, a very small. I mean, Francois Pienaar has got a thing called MAD, which Make a Difference Foundation. He's raised a lot of money in that. And he puts promising kids out, and he puts them through university. And he's had kids that have got through Harvard and that have got through Oxford. And I mean, you see those kids and you just talk to them and see what they've achieved and so on. I mean, there's nothing that can replace that for me. Is the ability or an environment where you can actually make a huge difference. And I think people sit around and they bitch and complain and, forget about that. Get on with it. Go and do something. Go and join an NGO. And you cannot believe the NGOs that we've got and the people that do it. And I'm not saying for one moment that there aren't massive frustrations. There are frustrations. I mean, even my daughter now, her frustrations with the government and dealing with bureaucracy and all that. But that's all part of it. To achieve something, I always say for entrepreneurs, to achieve something at some stage you must sort of crawl over broken glass. And that's what happens. But when you get there and when you achieve something and when you see the difference you can make, I mean, it is so incredibly uplifting and you feel good about it. So that's a little bit personal philosophies.
No, but I think that's fantastic because that kind of news never gets onto Facebook or the social media platform.
No, Jesus. I mean, do you know? I mean, I was looking the other day at the bots that they've got. They're factories. These bots are factories. They're people that sit in rooms with multiple computers, and they generate negative news or positive news or news to support whatever they're trying to support, whether it's an election in America or an election somewhere else or whatever it is. And they're here. They do that. So if there's one little bit of bad news about South Africa, guaranteed it'll be amplified to the maximum. And I'm not saying that there isn't bad news. Of course there is. Is crime bad? Of course it's bad. Of course it's bad. But that doesn't sort of overwhelm people that have emigrated. Haven't I would suggest that there were always ways that they could have dealt with the crime situation here. Because what has happened is that the resourcefulness of South Africans, South Africans with means, they've sorted themselves out. You've got private security, you've got private schools, you've got private medical, we've sorted ourselves out. Now, all of those things are under threat, but they've always been under threat. They've always been under threat. The conversations we have about all the shit that South Africa is in are the same conversations I used to have when I was at university. Exactly the same. Oh, guys, we've only got 5 years. We're going to go one way. We're in a crisis situation in the country. We've always been like that, and I find that those sort of crises, it's quite sort of, you're alive. You wake up and you've got some challenges out there. But if you put your head down and you do something about it and you stop whinging, it can be so fulfilling and motivating.
I hear you. Paul, a question just in terms of, you in your businesses like Rain and the banks and so on, you obviously deal with a lot of young people. And a lot of those people aren't necessarily white people. And I just get the sense, that unfortunately there are politicians. A world without politicians would have been a better place. What's your sense generally of young people in South Africa? Are they positive?
Yeah, young. The size of the middle class, the black middle class, is about double the white population in South Africa now. It's about that. So a lot of the young people coming through are obviously black guys. And I've just, I try not to distinguish between one or the other one, but we have got fantastic youngsters of all races that work for us. And it just happens to be that most of them are black, basically because they're more black middle class people than white middle class people, and so. And I mean, they are fantastic. And the last thing they're going to talk about is all this politics and how negative it is. These guys want to get on with it. They want to get a mortgage. They want to buy a house. And that's what people do. And I tell you, the young white guys are, I mean, they obviously don't have the same opportunities as the young black guys, basically because of some of the, the BE and that type of thing. But they're resourceful. I mean, I live now in Stellenbosch. And I've got an office in Stellenbosch, and we've got, people, youngsters that have started their own businesses. You cannot believe the quality of these businesses. And a lot of them work remotely. A lot of them have got businesses in other countries. I mean, I've had lunch with a guy whose business works in Saudi Arabia, and it works in the Middle East and works in Australia. I've got another guy that's also associated with us. They've got a bicycle insurance company that's international. these flight scope, the golfing apps, which is very high-tech stuff that tracks the golf ball and the cricket ball and all that type of thing. That's all South African. It's here next door. So these amazing businesses, and very often it's young white guys that are incredibly talented that struggle to get jobs in traditional companies, certainly not in the government. And so what do? They survive and they find a way and they start a business. And unfortunately, it's going to increase the difference between them. It's going to increase the inequality in a sense. But they're amazing. And, a hell of a lot of them. I mean, my son was and daughter were overseas for 5-6 years. Both of them came back. And they here in Stellenbosch, they could have a party, sort of let's say 40th or something like that. And they could invite 50 couples of people that are in their group, And I would say half of them have spent time overseas, and so they're very sort of worldly youngsters, and they're here out of choice. And so I think you'll find a lot of young guys are coming here. I also say that things are tough around the world. I mean, if you can't find something, if you can't find it here in South Africa, opportunity, then you're going to struggle to find it somewhere else. Maybe the competition's a little bit tougher out there. So it's not as if you're here and you sort of can't quite crack it and you go overseas and you're suddenly going to make it. You're probably also going to have to be in an hour's bloody commute on a train and wake up in the middle of the night and all that type of thing. So that's the alternative for these guys.
No, absolutely. And the guys are, other than maybe Australia, but people are battling to cope with the weather, for instance. The South Africans are used to braaiing every day. And when they want to braai, they braai. Our kids in Ireland braai under an umbrella, but they braai, but that's the reality. I think the other thing that I've also found in these discussions is that, the South Africans hang together. We understand each other's jokes. We understand what life is about. The foreigners have no idea. When you talk about South Africa and what life is like there and how we joke with each other, they look at you like you're from some other planet. But that's just the way it is. And I think an interesting thing that you said about how many young people, funnily enough, yesterday afternoon we were at lunch and the restaurateur said, oh, that guy's from South Africa. So we went over and chatted to them. And their kids live in Cape Town, and they said their kids are going nowhere, even though they're living in Portugal. They just said, we're not going anywhere. That's where the kids are and that's what they want to do. So I think that's the difficulty sometimes is when people are saying, okay, we're doing this for our children. So young people with young children, they say we want to leave because there's no opportunities and BEE and that. What does one say to them? What's the message to those guys?
Well, I think the first thing is just be careful that you go and then they come back. I mean, I know a lot of people that are in that situation. But, opportunities, okay, let's try and use an analogy of, let's say, a sporting team, a rugby team, okay? If you're a young rugby player and you want to go to an Afrikaans school, let's say Paul Roos, you have to be damn good to get into the first team. But if you go to a lesser rugby school, it's a bit easier to get into the first team. So now, how does that relate to advising somebody? And I think that if you can make it overseas, then you can make it in South Africa. I think that's what I say. You can't, if you're not going to make it in South Africa, you're going to struggle overseas. I mean, generally. So I would say tough it out, get that, I call the immigration thing as a worm that comes and eats away at your psyche, and you've forever talking about it, you're wondering where you should be living and all that. Once you just decide that that's over with, then get on with it. But having said that, for my philosophy is in terms of kids, you must have wings, but you must have roots. And so going out and getting a more worldly view of things, I think that's fantastic. I think it's important. So young kids that want to go over there, go for it, go for it, go and get that experience and so on. But if you say, I want to go there and I want to go and live there forever, and if you're going to do it because you don't think there's a future here, I think you should think again about that. See it temporary thing. Because in any event, you're going to go over there and you're going to mainly mix with South Africans. And if you don't do that, you're going to have a tough time. And it's going to take a long process to go and get the type of French you can get here. Have a good go, but don't give away your roots. Because you're probably going to come back here for holidays and reunions and all that type in any event, which everybody does. If you don't, you're going to be pretty unhappy.
Absolutely. And people that do go back all say the same thing, that they love being back there, and often they leave in the middle of the European winter and they go to the sun in South Africa, and then it's even more difficult to go back. So when you always just see darkness. Now, Paul, I must say, I just think, it's so good to hear such a positive message. I've always known that you're a positive guy about South Africa, and I think it's fantastic to share that message, because I really do think there's an opportunity for people overseas. But ultimately, as you say, your roots are still what really matters. So I don't know if you have any closing thoughts before we finish.
No, I thought somewhere along the line you're going to ask me about the Trump meeting.
I try and keep politics out.
No, but that's not politics. That was theatre.
True that. Okay. So please give me your view.
Look, I mean, obviously, Trump was sort of directing everything he was saying at his constituency, which is MAGA constituency. And our guys were talking to South Africans. And there were some good things and bad things. I think the good thing from a South African point of view is that Ernie and Johan did quite a lot to bring business and government and the sort of racial divide. It did a really good thing for that. It said, basically the message was we're in this together, and it's, and we've got our challenges, and we're part of the same team. I think that was a very good thing. The other thing is putting crime on the agenda, that crime becomes a huge priority, and hopefully we can get some positive out of that. The negative, of course, is perceptions about South Africa, probably, took a big knock, and maybe people will be less inclined to come and invest here, which is a sad thing, but they were never inclined to come and invest here anyway, unfortunately. But I think opening the door to having a better relationship with America, it's incredibly important for South Africa. That rather be in that sort of alignment rather than the alternatives. So I think generally speaking, it was not bad for us, although we didn't necessarily come out of it looking very good internationally. And there was serious exaggeration about the crime and about the farm murders. That really is a serious over-exaggeration. Things have got a lot better, and it's not nearly as bad as what they say, relative to all the other crime. There's proper crime in this country.
No, that's true. The one comment that Johan made that was taken badly by maybe these bots was saying that he sleeps with open doors. and people said, well, with his kind of money, he probably has 24-hour security guards around him. So
there are a lot of comments that were made that you could, on all sides that you could sort of question and so on. But yeah, it was theatre.
It was, I must say, we had such a chuckle watching it. It was, but we all knew it was coming after that Zelensky one. It was inevitable that it would happen. So it was good theatre. But maybe as you say, there's good stuff that'll come out of it. And maybe the business guys, unfortunately, Adrian Gordon make it into the meeting because there were too many others. But
look, Adrian would have been amazing, very good. He was there, but the last minute he got the chop, and they put in Retief.
Yeah, and that lady, that trade unionist, I don't think did us any.
No,
But anyway, it was good theatre. But at least it's on the out there in the public domain.
We box above our weight. Big time. We a pimple on the backside of the mouse, and they're the cat. You know what I mean? So, but we there. We in there. having the G20. My goodness, that's quite something.
That's massive. And I think, on the sports field, obviously I follow golf and I watch the IPL and I saw Heinrich Klaasen clapping 100 or 37 balls yesterday. And that young Potgieter, he's still going to win big tournaments, So there's so many good South African stories out there. I think we just need to get people to focus on it. I promise you, I haven't found a podcaster that is prepared to do a good story about South Africa. I don't know. Maybe I'm searching in the wrong place, but Rob Hersov is massive.
No, I mean, you're Rob Hersov, please, man. I mean, if you want to influence people's opinions, you don't ridicule them. You get out of your own echo chamber. Give credit where credit is due. I shouldn't be too outspoken about that, but you can agree with a lot of what somebody says, but the way they say it, and if you ridicule people and so on, you're not really going to change opinions.
Yeah.
Your echo chamber is going to be, you're feeding that, but I don't know how big that echo chamber is. I'll give you an example. There's a friend of mine, a young black guy, Khaya Nhlanga. You can go and look at his Twitter account. He's got 600,000 followers. The Business Day, where that everybody reads here and everybody gets their opinion from in South Africa, has got 30,000.
Yes.
The people that count is not this echo chamber. It's that chamber. Now you can read what Khaya has to say. Khaya was, he's very positive about the role that Johan and those guys played in this Trump meeting.
I'll definitely go and look him up. Maybe I should get him on the podcast.
I think that's not a bad idea. Get him on the podcast.
I would love that. Yeah.
I can sort that out for you if you want to.
That'll be fantastic if you could do that.
Yeah.
No, awesome. Paul, I don't know if you've got any other thoughts.
No, I just hope, I haven't, one thing I know is that, and we've researched this in our companies, that if you express opinions in social media and podcasts and all that, you get a natural distribution around how people respond. And there's a bell curve. And I'm fully prepared to accept that more than half the bell curve will think I've been talking complete shit.
Not at all.
That's fun. I think that's how it works.
I think it's fantastic. I really, and everyone has an opinion, and I think it's just
exactly.
It's our job to get the story across in a balanced opinion. That's fantastic. So I can just say honestly, thank you for sharing why South Africa is home for you. It's so refreshing to get a discussion like this after the week that we've had, and I really appreciate your time and the great conversation. Thank you, Paul.
It was a pleasure. Thanks, Jan.
If you enjoyed my discussion with Paul and would like to hear more about the experience of South Africans outside of South Africa, why not subscribe on your favorite platform? If you would like to share your own story or comment on today's episode, contact me on relocatedSouthAfrican@gmail.com. Until next time.